threatening me?
Hey there folks, it's Blue here from Blue Bears Games, and this video will be the upgrade guide for the growing threat March of the Machine Commander precon. If you watched the unboxing, you will remember that I said that this precon is a disaster, and after going through it more thoroughly, it's even worse than I thought. Truthfully, I could replace every card in the deck except for maybe a few cards, and it would make for a much better deck. Sadly, neither you nor I have enough time for that, and the price for all the cards wouldn't be worth putting into this build, so instead, I'm going to show you 19 cards that I believe will help focus this deck a lot more and really help make it a much better deck to pilot. My goal here will be to hone in on a few of the mechanics while also bringing the overall mana curve down by quite a bit from the original build. Before I get into the guide though, I want to take a moment to let you know that if you're in the market for a pretty awesome deck box, playmat, or sleeves, please visit our sponsor at arcane-fortress.com and take a look at what they have. Their deck boxes are some of the best that I've ever used, and you can even get an additional 5% off of your total purchase if you use discount code BLUEBEAR at checkout. Now let's get to it and see if I can make this deck a lot better, or at least a lot more playable for you. First, let's take a look at what I'd suggest to remove. Out of the box, this precon had a whopping 50 mana sources. 50! That's half the deck. It makes sense though when you see how many spells this deck started out with that cost 5 or more mana. Since I'm going to reduce that by quite a bit, I can take out the extra mana sources, so I would remove 2 Swamps, Orzhov Locket, Ichor Elixir, and Coveted Jewel. I also decided that I wanted to focus more on the Phyrexian aspect of Burmaz's ability and not the artifact creature part, so I would take out Scrap Trawler, Shimmermere, Duplicant, Meteor Golem, Mere Battlesphere, Phyrexian Trinisphere, Ancient Stone Idol, Blade Splicer, Master Splicer, Darksteel Splicer, and Sculpting Steel. I also decided to remove a couple of the Phyrexians in that section because of the mana cost, but don't worry, I'll be replacing them with better options. The last 3 cards I'd remove are Angel of the Ruins, Moira and Tishar, and Phyrexian Ghoul for mana cost reasons, functionality reasons, or because I found pure upgrades for them, which I'll mention later. That's 19 cards I would remove to start with. So now, let me show you 19 cards I believe would make this deck much less of a disaster. Before I show you the cards that I would swap in though, I want to remind you that if you want mana fixing land upgrade suggestions, check out the upgrade guide video that I did for the Forces of the Imperium Warhammer 40k precon. At the top right of your screen is a link you can use to go to that video. I have timestamped the guide in the description of that video so you can easily find it after you're done watching this one. Now let's talk about the cards that I would swap in. I'll start with Minas Tirith. I've suggested this card a couple of times, but it's worth reiterating why. Repeatable card draw is very important in this game, and anytime you can get it, especially in a land, is worth it. The requirement to get the card draw is minimal in a deck that creates creature tokens since they're sacrificial lambs for you anyway. Next, I want to show you 11 creatures that are not only direct upgrades to what I suggested to remove, but are also a lot less mana on average as well. They are Skrelv Defector Might, because it's a 1-mana creature that gives you an alternate win con with poison counters, and also can help protect creatures by giving them this quasi-protection from a color when needed. Grafted Butcher, because this is one of the few lords for Phyrexians and should have been in the deck to start. Phyrexian Censor, because hindering what your opponents can do during the course of a game while not affecting you all that much is too good to leave out. Bloated Processor, because this is a direct upgrade to Phyrexian Ghoul. While the buff the Ghoul gets may be bigger, it's only temporary, while the Processor's is permanent. The fact that it incubates upon death is a nice bonus as well. Aron Benalia's Ruin, because it's another direct upgrade to the Phyrexian Ghoul, only now, it makes your entire army bigger and not just itself. Phyrexian Vindicator, because it's just a beast of a Phyrexian creature. 4 mana for a 5/5 flyer with the added ability of dealing damage to anything you want while preventing any that it takes seems pretty good. On the other side of that coin is Phyrexian Obliterator. Another 5/5 for 4 mana, but now with trample instead of flying, and anytime it takes damage, it forces the source's controller of that damage to sacrifice permanents equal to the damage it takes. Kinda nuts if you ask me. The March of the Machine version of Elesh Norn, because not only is a 4-mana 3/5 with Vigilance good, but it also comes with a whole slew of other things that it can do. It's a stacks piece that can dissuade opponents from attacking you, and even turns itself into a saga that incubates, buffs your army, and is a massive board wipe that is mostly one-sided. It's like a Swiss Army Phyrexian knife. Mondrak Glory Dominus because a 4/4 for 4 mana that also doubles the tokens you create in a deck that's centered around the incubate mechanic is a no-brainer. Might Overseer because not only does it buff those incubation tokens, but it also creates its own tokens that just happen to be Phyrexians that also have a path to a poison counter victory. The March of the Machine Sheoldred because similar to Elesh Norn, its stats and abilities to mana cost ratio is pretty good, and now it has removal attached to it both when it enters play and when it becomes a saga. It also makes opponents mill cards, discard cards, and is mass graveyard recursion for just you. That's pretty good value for the 5 mana, especially compared to some of the stuff I suggested to swap out that costs way more. Moving on from creatures, I'd also like to show you the following. Skrelv's Hive because it creates Phyrexian tokens with the alternate poison win con for you every turn without spending any resources. Herald's Horn because it acts as both a cost reducer for your Phyrexians and a way to put cards into your hand. It's not card draw exactly, but it's just as good, if not better, in some situations. Vanquisher's Banner because it's a static buff for your Phyrexians while also being actual card draw that's repeatable. Fracture because I felt like this deck needed a little bit more removal, and this is a really good one for these colors. Utter End for the same reason as Fracture, more removal, and again, this one is pretty decent for this color pairing. And the last thing I want to show you is a combo for this deck. There were many options, but I felt that the one I'm about to show you fits the spirit of the deck better than any of the other ones that you could use. It starts with 2 cards that I already suggested adding earlier, Mondrak Glory Dominus and Might Overseer. If you add in both Ashnod's Altar and Suture Priest, you get the following infinitely. Token creation, enters the battlefield triggers, death triggers, leaves the battlefield triggers, life gain, and colorless mana. How it works is you need all 4 cards on the battlefield and access to 3 generic mana and either 2 life or 1 white mana. You activate the Might Overseer, creating 2 1/1 Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens. The Phyrexian Mights will enter the battlefield, triggering Suture Priest's first ability twice, causing you to gain 2 life. Then you can sacrifice those 2 Mights to the altar, giving you 4 colorless mana. Simply just repeating this process infinitely will give you access to infinite colorless mana, assuming you paid the life instead of paying white for the Phyrexian mana. Sadly, you don't get to keep the life created by this combo, because it's used to keep the combo going, but if you later decide to add something that benefits you for gaining life, then even better. If you need any of that explained any further, please ask in the comments section and I will elaborate further. And that, my fellow Spellslingers, was my upgrade guide for the Growing Threat March of the Machine Commander Precon. While everything that I just went over will certainly help the deck out quite a bit, it's far from perfect. It will, however, make it a lot more playable, but just don't expect to win any tournaments with it. Think more casual fun play than competitive for this one. So that's all for not only this video, but also for the March of the Machine precons as well. That's one more set down and a whole bunch more to go. I will be unboxing and upgrading the Lord of the Rings precons soon, but not for a couple of weeks. I've got a few of my own decks I want to go over first before I dive back into the precons, so join me next week where I'll start doing that for a little bit. One of the videos I have lined up is something a little different than I normally do, so you won't want to miss it. As always, thanks for watching, and if you could, please do me the favor of giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so yet, sharing this out to anyone you think would enjoy it, and visiting our sponsor at arcane-fortress.com and using discount code BlueBear for an additional 5% off your order if you decide to purchase anything from them. Now, unless you decide to go and watch some of my many other videos, I will see you all next week.